All right, guys. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us, everybody who is on Zoom and on Facebook. We are here talking about the Eternal Discovery, the 26th Cabernet. We are still having a little slight technical difficulty with one of our panelists here, but we're going to jump right in. And we're going to.
I got the speaker on now.
Hey, we can hear you.
That's better than
Okay, good. Had to go into the phone. My mic wasn't working on my old monitor.
Gotcha. Well, we don't have video for Dominic, but we do have at least audio. So
and imagine.
Take it.
We'll take what we can get. Yeah. So we have. Let me just introduce who we have with panelists with us. We have Ashley and Katie, and they are from Columbia Label, located in the heart of Washington's Red Mountain AVA, and is a premium wine label producer. And they are the people that print our beautiful labels as well. So we will definitely go into that. And then from May's Discovery Vineyard, we have Oliver May. And not only is he the manager over there, he is a fellow classmate of mine, and we graduated together from the EV program. So kind of cool to have him on this. And then no video but audio. Dominic Calandre is our rep in the Seattle area, and so if you need any Eternal wines up in the area, he is the guy that you got to call. So say hello, Dominic.
Thank you. Glad the guys can make it here.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, let's get into the Eternal Discovery Cab Sauv. So why did I decide to make it, and what did I do, right? So the Eternal Discovery Cab Sauv is obviously the easiest name for the wines so far. I mean, Eternal Discovery, it was perfect. I was like, damn, this is like meant to be, right? And this is the first Cabernet that we've released on the Eternal Wine side, which is pretty cool. And when you release a Cabernet, and definitely a wine that people judge you on, right? So it was really important for me to make sure everything was completely right and correct with this wine. And so it ended up spending 30 months in barrel, and we're just sipping on it right now. So hopefully you guys at home are sipping on it too. If not, hopefully you're sipping on something. And then we're just going to kind of go into everything that went into making this one bottle of wine from the vineyard to the final product and to your table. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to go quickly jump into the tasting. I'm going to swing it over to Dominic for his first impressions on the wine and how he evaluates wine when he's tasting it.
Well, usually what sorry you guys can't see me. I have one of those older monitors. Usually what I like to do with the wine is I'm always a mid-palate drinker myself. I like to have those nice rich tannins that go to the back of the mouth and top of the tongue, and then just sort of, gracefully, not over the top, just hang on and give you all that rich flavor from the wine as it lingers and you get to enjoy it with food. And the one thing about Brad's wines that are always so great, there's a generous amount of new oak, but it's not over the top. The wines have that big mouthfeel, but then they also, like you said, you can taste those tannins. They're hanging on there. And as you sip, they just get the last, that, nice bite of steak, that little bit of pasta, and, and they just sit really well. And that's how I like to enjoy a wine, always better with food as well as friends.
Totally. I've never drank a whole bottle of wine by myself. Forever. Well, Ashley, Katie, why don't you guys, what are you guys getting on this wine? Oh, sorry, I muted you, so we can't even hear. Okay, hang on a second. Let me unmute you. Sorry about that. It was a little windy, and so I unmuted you. So
It's a good plan to do that if the wind's blowing. Go ahead, Ash.
I get a lot of cherries, a lot of dark cherry, and it's like a warm mouthfeel, and it lingers like in the back of the throat, which I really like. I like that it stays, and the flavor develops as you're like waiting for the next sip,
Yeah.
I guess.
What I just did a minute ago is I was tasting it with different temperatures because on the back of it, it says something like,
Well, on your tasting notes that you provided us prior to this, you recommended serving temp at 55, and we were like, ooh, a Cabernet Sauvignon at 55 degrees. So we chilled it a little bit.
yeah, so we had this bottle open and in the fridge, so I was just tasting the differences between the two. It's not too far off for me. I don't think I was as cold as 55 degrees, that's for sure, because it's 90 out here. But I agree with you when you say that it's like sitting in your throat, but for me, it's higher. I get a more aroma flavor to it for me, and I really enjoy it, and it's that warming feeling like that. I know this isn't fortified, but it has that like brandy for me where it just like sits there and I can breathe it in.
It's good.
Yeah, I'm drinking it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a hard one for Oliver, what are your tasting notes on it, man?
Oh yeah, I get dark red stone fruit, nice soft tannins, blending well with the oak tannin. I think it's got can age a few more years, that's for sure. And I think those tannins together really give you a nice round mouth feel.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you. Yeah, I love this wine. It definitely needs some. It could have a lot more time in the bottle.
But still delicious now, for sure.
Yeah. So, and that's always the thing that I think we've talked about it on these webinars before. It's like people ask you how long should you hold on to a wine. And it's like, well, what kind of how do you like the wine? Do you like older wines? Do you like that style, or do you like it bigger, bolder? And if you like the big, bold wines, then don't be aging it, of course. So.
Yeah, it's still retaining a lot of nice fresh fruit right now.
Yeah, 100%. So, let's talk about just Cabernet in general. I'm from Washington because we definitely got I was a sommelier in Charleston, South Carolina, and we would get the Merlot and the Cabernet, but we wouldn't get a lot of the other wines out here. So this is, I'm definitely pretty familiar with Washington Cabs myself. And Ashley, like, what's your feeling on Washington Cabs that you've tried so far?
I feel like this area in general is definitely producing the boldest Cabernet Sauvignons tasted. Gone to a lot of events, and the ones, the cabs that are coming out of Red Mountain and the Horse Heaven Hills definitely have the most character, most ranging anywhere from those super stone fruiters to just like completely off the wall, like what am I even drinking right now? That I can't describe or even pinpoint. So, a lot of complexity from this area.
For sure. Dominic, what as far as Horse Heaven Hills itself has gone, what's your impression on wines from that area?
Well, the wines from Horse Heaven Hills, I actually think, are some of the most well-rounded wines in Washington, because the AVA is, 3 times the size of like Walla Walla, 10 times the size of Red Mountain. It has a lot more diverse vineyards in there, from your older school wines that are there, with the shampoos from Paul Shampoo and all those, to some of the newer, younger ones that are south of Prosser and such. The one thing I've always loved about Horse Heaven Hills, and a little bit to say the same about Walla Walla, is that the wines coming out of there, as opposed to like Red Mountain as a good example, or Rattlesnake Hills, is they have a lot richer acidity. So you get a lot more of that, that balance on the back end, as well as that big fruit on the front end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you nailed it 100% right there. I think that's definitely something that makes makes it special over there. Oliver, I mean, this is your vineyard. This is your folks' family vineyard. Talk to us about Discovery Vineyard Cabernet.
Yeah, I think Dominic nailed it, but kind of the piggyback on some things he said. But yeah, I think Cab from Horse Heaven Hills and Discovery results in softer tannins than you'd see at Red Mountain, and because of which they're more approachable, easier to drink. You don't need to stay down for as long. You can still enjoy that fresh fresh fruit when the wine's young and not get turned away by the kind of aggressive tannins. Yeah, and the growing environment lends itself to varietal bottlings of many different varieties, but especially Cab and vineyard nestling that's coming from Discovery Vineyard too. So I think we're pretty well represented.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to kind of get in on the back end, knowing you through the community college program, right? Because not everybody can just walk in and get fruit from you guys, and that says a lot about the vineyard itself. My thoughts on the vineyard and Cabernet and this Cabernet in particular is that, yeah, you do have those nice subtle fine tannins that that it's not too much. It's not, Red Mountains definitely gets a little bit more heat units, and we get bigger, bolder wines. This isn't a Red Mountain Cabernet. It's a Horse Heaven Hills Cabernet, and I really enjoy the flavors that we were able to achieve with it, and what we were able to do with it. So, I want to hear more about Discovery Vineyard, Oliver. So tell me the history about the vineyard, and why your parents decided to buy it.
Yeah, so my dad was a dental technician on the west side of the Cascades in Vancouver, Washington, where I grew up, and he retired from that industry and decided to buy this piece of property from an old friend that used to farm apples on it, but got sick of perennial farming and ripped them all out, and had been sitting on the property for many years, and had been looked at by many high-end wineries like Damon Heward and Dan Marino's winery, Passing Time, before they actually started making wine, and Drew Bledsoe had all been looking at the property, as well as Quilceda Creek, and had been working with Paul Shampoo to develop the site and collect data, temperatures and whatnot, and soil tests on it. So that was all happening before my parents even looked at buying it. And once they did buy it, these quarterbacks and Quilceda Creek weren't very happy that they lost their opportunity, I think. And my dad's plan was just to run some cows on the property and live out his silver years. But Quilceda Creek approached him and offered to buy 11 acres of fruit from them if they planted it at 8 feet by 3 feet spacing, and it mandated or encouraged us to have Paul Shampoo help manage and install the vineyard to get us going. And my dad decided to jump into the next portion of his career or his life and start growing wine grapes. Kind of an anomaly, but it's worked out tremendously well. I mean, surprisingly for, I think, all of us.
Yeah. I mean, what kind of varietals do you guys have there?
We've got Merlot, Cab Sauv, Cab Franc, Syrah, and Petit Verdot. And it's 24 acres of the original planting in 2005. And then 6 years ago, we just planted another 14 acres that stair steps down closer to the Columbia River. Yeah, so the vineyard is perched above the Columbia River, right above an island state park called Crow Butte State Park. And the original 24 acres is on the top shelf, and then there's a bench that comes down that's about 4 acres of Cab Franc and Merlot, and then another block down right next to the river of 11 acres. And so we planted that in 2006, and that's going to some very nice winemakers too. I get it?
Yeah, 100%. So let's kind of focus back on Cabernet specifically. In your vineyard, and specifically that block that I got for this wine. I mean, what are the challenges that you had specifically growing this? Because there's a lot of microclimates inside of your vineyard too.
Yeah, the rows that you got this fruit from is some of our shallow soils, really rocky, and maybe 18 inches or less of sandy loam or loess on top of fractured basalt. So it's very, very thin, and I have to water that section of the vineyard more than the rest to try to build up the canopy and make sure those plants don't get water stressed. And it's resulting in it's kind of a weak spot, which lends itself to smaller berries and smaller clusters, which winemakers always like. But to try to strengthen those vines, I've gone through and shoot thinned them early so that the plant can focus all of their energy into the remaining shoots that I left, so that so you get a more robust plant, but without sacrificing fruit quality or developing in too much vigor. So yeah, it's a little bit of a tenuous spot, but I'm starting to get to know it now.
Awesome. I just want to give a shout out really quick. We got Jay Galante who's watching us. He's our label designer and one of my oldest buddies going back to elementary school and middle school. So shout out to him. And we got RS Binko, as in the Cheektowaga crew, we call him Daddy Warbucks. So he's out there representing too. So I just want to say, throw a quick shout out to you guys. I want to swing it back to Ashley and Katie really quick. I'll unmute you guys here, or you can. Perfect. Now we're dropping you. See, there's all these problems.
See what happens? I push on.
Unbelievable.
I'm screwed up again. The struggle.
It's all good. But have you guys ever tasted wines from his vineyard before? Before this one?
I have not. I tried to look online to see if I could find any references, and I was like, I haven't tried this vineyard before, so I was really excited, and I'm very, very, very happy with it. It's delicious. So to both the winemaker and Oliver at the vineyard, very nice.
Yeah, I'm an infant when it comes to wine. I can make labels all day long, but as for tasting wine, I've progressed and adulted into reds, and I'm loving this, so that's great.
Although you did mention Quilceda, so you're making some wine for them then, is that right?
We don't make any wine. They ended up buying a big share in shampoo vineyards and also in the benches in Willow the Gap. So they've since then stopped taking fruit from us, but we still talk to them often to try to get the pulse of the industry, and they've helped us out a lot finding new clients, and yeah, still good.
Okay.
Still good relationship.
Awesome.
But I agree with Katie. I'm still learning so much about where the wine is coming from, and I love it, especially we're from this area. So we've seen these vineyards, we've been out there, and it's a beautiful area, and just knowing like what kind of wine it's producing is pretty cool.
Yeah, being here before all the vineyards, now living in Prosser, seeing everything, experiencing this, learning it. I'm loving listening to everything.
Learning a lot.
Well, I want to ask Dominic. And Dominic, have you tried any wines from Discovery Vineyard before this?
Not 100% Discovery Vineyards, like he said. If some of the fruits going over to the Golitsons over at Quilceda Creek. So I've had some of his vineyard in other wines. I have never had it as 100% varietal, except for from your winery.
Gotcha. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about the technical process that I went through making this. So 2016, we actually did our harvest at Burlington Lane. We rented space there, and we were able to do it there. So this was one of the bigger lots that we did. It was pressed with our membrane press, and we were able to get really good extraction with that. It was a longer fermentation, about 30 days overall. I do native yeast with all my Rhone varietals, but with the Bordeaux, I don't. I prefer more of a clean, more of a guaranteed flavor profile, I suppose. And so I chose NT112 as far as the yeast that went into this one. So fermentation, yeah, it was about 30 days overall through primary and secondary. And then we aged it in French oak, and it was all once filled French oak. So you didn't get the brand new, the harsh kind of tannins that kind of like that you can get in some wines. It kind of give it a nice, more smooth profile, while still giving it those soft tannins, and really increasing that mouthfeel too. And then I decided to age it 30 months in the barrel before bottling it. That was the longest that we had gone so far, up to the point where we bottled this. As far as aging a wine for that long, and the reason was I just thought it needed it. And when I first started the winery, in 2014, I had to kind of, release wines that weren't really ready. I had to bottle wines that I didn't think were ready yet, just because we didn't have anything, for sale. And so that's what we had to do. And so now we're fortunate enough to have the opportunity to say, well, hey, I think this wine would benefit from another, 4, 5, 6 months in the barrel, and then retaste it and go from there. And so that's what we kind of do with that one. And so, I would have thought that I would have released it earlier because, 30 months in the barrel, and then I kept it in the bottle for 6 months before we released it as well too. So, and I think it's really showing incredibly nice right now as well. So let's switch the topic, go away from the wine for a second, and let's go into the label design and the printing, because I think there's just so much that goes on there that, the normal person just doesn't understand. They think, whatever, yeah, they just print a label and they put it on the bottle and that's that. That's that is quite not the case. So Ashley and Katie, I'll let you ladies take it away.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it.
I think that's cute with like they just make the label. Like I get that a lot. Like, oh, do it now, and it's like, yeah, but wait, what do you want involved in your label? Like,
yeah, there are so many variables that go into a label design, and depending on what effect the winemaker wants to achieve with their design, whether they want to be, very classic or they want to feel modern. If they want some embellishment that's going to be completely different than anything anybody's ever seen. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, it's your calling card. So
Yeah.
You're immediately like, oh, what's going on with this wine? And like with Eternal, I pick it up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can feel it. Why? I mean, it's entertaining for the consumer to be able to engage with the label. So I think that's great. And
oh, we got
sorry,
bees. But yeah,
we get a lot of bees during harvest, so I feel your pain.
we love the bees.
Yeah.
We both have a bumblebee tattoo. We're big fans of the bees.
Right. I'm down here on Byron, so I've got a lot of wine around me. So yeah.
But yeah, I think that a common misconception is that we're like a Vistaprint, where you just upload your JPEG and we're gonna print it out and it'll be done tomorrow. And I recommend to anybody who's wanting to design a new label to start the process early. Get involved with your designer and with your mobile bottler and with your printer, and really find out what it's going to take to achieve those goals. I think the best ones, give at least 6 months worth of planning before we get to the actual print date.
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes you don't know all that information because you're trying to get your wine out of the barrels and you've got the alcohol percentage and stuff. But having that conversation with your label maker is really significant, because knowing what you're going to get into. One of the Eternal wine labels, they have two-sided printing. So you can look at the bottle and you'll see the grapes through the bottle. So you read all the information, but if you're wanting to see it, you're looking through it. So that's really exciting to be able to do something like that. But having that conversation beforehand, figuring out what it is you need to get there, like the imaging and all that stuff. So it's nice to work with designers and know what they want, and the customers as well to know what they want. I've had customers come in and just have that conversation like, here's my designer's idea. And I'm like, well,
How do we make it a reality?
you want water effects? I have the things. So it's,
Yeah, we love to be involved as much as our customers are allowing us to be.
yeah, we've done some fun stuff where we've just gone up and pitched an idea, even because I don't want to name drop other people or anything, but
We like to pitch ideas.
yeah, we had fun. We turned something glow in the dark and we gave it dimension and embossed it and made some stuff happen for something that was Estate 8 plain print, nothing going on with it. And it was fun time just having that conversation, even between the two of us. We're sisters, if you didn't know, but just having that conversation between the two of us and bouncing ideas off. So I don't know, labels.
Working with someone like Brad, he's very understanding of the process, which we are so grateful for, you know, understanding that we have a research and development period where we're trying to get these new ideas to actually happen and become reality.
Fruition.
So yes, come to fruition. So having a little bit of patience with the process, as I'm sure you guys know, is
Patience
a big
with the
part
grapes,
of it.
patience
Yeah.
with the winemaking, and just the label's also a development because it is your calling card and it is something that you want the consumer to pick up or recognize and know that like that's the logo that I want to. Let me grab that one.
Yeah, it's got to stand off the shelf. It's got to scream your name out.
So we want to take the time to do that because we're investing in you so you can invest in your wine. We want to make that happen for you. We try and make, and we're here in the Valley. We understand everything. We're in Washington State. We get that. We want to develop those relationships. Ashley goes out and does outside sales. So she goes to all these events that help her cultivate. I've seen Brad at multiple events, like, yes. So it's nice to have those relationships and be able to work with customers and get going through that. But
I also try and get out in the vineyard whenever I'm invited to see that process. So Oliver, if you ever want to have
meeting up with people.
I'd love to see what you're doing out there.
Yeah,
I like to meet bubble bottlers, everybody I can, to understand this better so that once it leaves our facility and gets to you guys, everything is smooth sailing and you can just put your bottle out there and make some sales.
And with that, there's a great idea with the fact that with our team, even we want to make sure that they understand the process. You're going out there and you're learning about the wines. You're learning about the time frame that people have to get stuff out of the tanks. You're learning about the time frame in which they have their mobile bottler available to them. You're realizing that if they've scheduled a bottler, they've scheduled their crew to be there to do stuff to help along those lines. Like you have to understand the entire process of it. So we take our employees out, we show them bottling lines. We've taken our employees out to vineyards to do different, learn to see the machines and what
We're
goes on
involved.
to it. Yeah, we're excited to be here and do stuff, watching people smash grapes, go through it, grape taster. We've been doing all of the things, not just making labels.
No, you drop a lot of good points there, and it is important that that we understand what you do and you understand what we do, and that definitely helps overall. The product come to life, and you brought up, you can feel, our label, with the embossing, and that's definitely something that.
Beautiful.
There you go. It's a beautiful label.
You guys did a great job.
Designing that. It's a beaut. But yeah, maybe some glow in the dark next time, huh? Man, okay.
We've done some embossing glow in the dark.
Ooh, I think for your eternal night wine. Ooh.
There we go. Well, I don't have enough wine, obviously, so I think I could create one more.
What's one more label?
No big deal. Sweet. Well, so Dominic, you're the actual person who, let me unmute you there. I'm trying to unmute you. It's not really working. Maybe you can, there you go. So you're the actual guy who actually has to go out there in the greater Seattle area and actually, sell our wine, and you sell other people's wines too, of course. And so we'll talk about the importance of label for you.
Well, the label is, of course, wine's always first. You hate to say that if you don't have a great wine, you can't sell it. But the label is important sometimes. So that is that first impression. If you put a cartoon character on there, you put a funky scene on there, it to the average consumer it just sort of tells them that this is a drink right now. I'm not going to pull out more than Andrew Jackson $20 bill for it, and that's that. So whether it be a cartoon frog, we don't want something like that on a bottle of wine. Figured you like that one. But at the same time, if you have a classy label, if you have a label that has a little bit of texture to it, when they actually, that has that tactile feel when they actually grab it and it feels like it's just not cheap paper that was, thrown on there with some glue, it gives the person the impression that you cared about this image, and you probably cared about what was in the bottle too. And then you back that up with, you know, being able to have a great wine. And then when they ask that store, you know, sommelier or the wine steward or the person that owns that shop, you know, what do you think of this one? That just reinforces the opinion of that initial first impression of a great looking label, or even at the same time, just a solid label that just tells a person that there's quality fruit in this bottle.
Definitely. Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, I mean, we all judge wine by the labels if we don't know it, you know. You kind of you look at it, you read it, and then in your mind you decide, you know, the quality before even tasting it. I think that's something we all do, even if we're sommeliers or not. So I agree 100%. So let's jump back into the vineyard and specifically the vintage, because obviously, you know, vineyard designate wines are great, and you know that's what Eternal Wines is all about. However, it's also cool to taste the different vintage variations year to year of the same wine. And so, you know, we've been lucky enough to get some fruit from Discovery for a couple of years, so we'll have a nice little vertical eventually when we release them all. But what I want to talk about is the 2016 vintage overall, since this is the 2016 Discovery Cab that we're talking about. So Oliver, like, how was the year as a grower for you?
It was a great growing year. It was very hot. I remember it was very hot, which isn't great for my complexion, but great for the grapes and the wine, right? But it was a really cold, really good. You know, we got a really cold winter, which is good to promote full dormancy in the grapes and the vines, and helps reduce pests in the vineyard. So that started off on a good footnote. Anyways, yeah. So it was a hot growing year. In August, we had at least 2 weeks of high 90s, which is, you know, not exactly great for development of the fruit, but it results in good wine in the end. The vines pretty much shut down respiring and photosynthesizing after, you know, 95 or something, 92. So, but it helps concentrate on the flavors and colors. I think helps to facilitate that. But we had good diurnal nocturnal temperature swings. As much as 40 degrees difference, which helps us retain as much acid as possible, and gives the plants much needed respite from the heat to uptake water and get ready for the next you know, hot day. Overall, that year we used 13 inches on the of irrigation on the vineyard, which shows you that that it was a hot year and demanded a lot of irrigation. We usually use more like 10 or 11 on a more cool year like last year. So it was an early harvest. We had veraison on the third week of July, which is early. Like, as of now, we still haven't seen veraison. So I'm thinking we'll see it either next week or the week after. Start to see it in our early varieties. But you can see how big of a difference that is. Probably 2-week difference from 2016 to this year. But yeah, it resulted in some really, really nice wines that came out of the vineyard. We have several vineyard designates that our other winemakers made, and they all scored very well. And yeah, it was a really perfect hot growing year. Maybe a little hot, but it ended up in really nice wine.
It was definitely hot. I remember that. It was, and then, you know, all of a sudden someone just turned out the heat, you know. But I guess that was closer to November, so that really isn't too out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
If you don't know, we do put all of our the stats on the back of the bottle as far as like when we picked it and everything. So we actually picked these grapes on October 11th, 2016, and I would say that was actually a little bit later. You know, by that time in 2016, we had definitely had most of our fruit in already, especially. Well, I mean, I guess you have to keep in mind that most of our wines that we do is Syrah, right? And Syrah is one of the first ripening varieties out there. So, you know, if we do 50% Syrah, well, come October, we're probably at least 90% of that Syrah in already. So, but yeah, like Oliver said, really small berries. That was the one thing that I noticed about the fruit when it came in, just really tasty. You know, it wasn't big. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't going to hit you in the face. It had a lot of flavor to it. And I think that was something that you see in the Discovery Vineyard wines that you taste from other winemakers too, is that the actual fruit comes out, you know, as long as you don't cover it up with too much oak. So, you know, I'm interested to see, Dominic, what your opinion is on the 2016 vintage overall, as far as like, you know, when you go and you sell a wine, if it's 2016, like, are people excited? What do they say? What are they, you know, what are other people saying about it? What are you saying about it, I guess is the question. And you're on mute too right now, so there you go.
Well, what's about the 2016 is that since so few of the bigger Cabernets have come out yet, there hasn't been like an overall consensus with, you know, whether it be the sommeliers or the wine stewards. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to talk to as many of the sommeliers since a lot of the restaurants over here in Seattle were closed for that. But the overall feel is that the 2016 is going to be a little bit more of a winemaker and vineyard area wines are going to showcase more than overall for the whole Washington industry. As Oliver was saying, because the season was so hot and then the harvest was so early, that didn't give enough time for certain vineyards to be able to get that rich acidity in some wines. You know, it was a little too hot for them. There's going to be a little bit, but this is one of those years that's going to be the inverse of like 2010, where it was a lot cooler, and the winemakers and those people that show a real good control of their craft are going to show a lot better than the other winemakers in Washington as a whole. And so, and that's sort of the vibe I've been getting. People want to taste them because you know, the 2015 and 16 were a little bit of differences in the heat units. And that's why I'd be interested with Oliver, because I'm not as familiar with Discovery, is since the Discovery Vineyard is so close to the Columbia River, how the difference in that vineyard goes between day and night in temperatures, and helps, you know, basically refine those fruits and adds those different qualities to the grapes, you know, versus other vineyards that, like he says, are, you know, closer to Red Mountain and Kennewick or further north towards Prosser, where they may not get as those cool of nights.
Yeah, exactly. You're 100% right. The Columbia River, or being so close to the Columbia River and adjacent to Columbia River, really facilitates our kind of microclimate, and that it kind of buffers us from extreme colds in the spring and fall, which result in canopy damage and you know, high potassium loads in fruit near harvest, but also protects us from spring freezes, like the freeze in 2009 that wiped out pretty much all of Horse Heaven Hills to the ground. The vineyards, we escaped totally unaffected. And and yes, to what you're saying, the diurnal and nocturnal swings, I think the river really facilitates in that too, and giving us a kind of a cooling effect compared to some of the vineyards uphill north of us in the Horse Heaven Hills that probably get a lot more reflected heat from the ground that's been soaked up during the day. Does that make sense?
So you're saying that you get a little bit more cooler nights in August than some of the other vineyards in the area, correct?
I think so, yeah, and it helps keep our soil temperature down a little bit cooler than adjacent vineyards.
Love it.
And that's one thing I found out. I was going to say, that was one thing I found out that I love about Horse Heaven Hills, as I said earlier. Same thing with like Walla Walla, and I think even, you know, up and coming Lake Chelan, is because of those cooler nights, the grapes have a chance to sort of rejuvenate a little bit instead of having that extreme 80, 90 degree heat, you know, at midnight. And so you get a lot more, you know, better balance in the wines and that nice acidity, which, as Brad was saying earlier, that's one of the things that's going to showcase for a lot of different wineries with the 2016 vineyard. Those are the vintage, that those people that have those greater vineyards and that can work with them are going to be able to show their wines a lot better than some of the others, whether it's just going to be big fruit with nothing on the back end.
Right. Yeah, and to your point, that those cool nights help facilitate retention of acid and allows the fruit to be able to hang out there longer, which the winemakers always love.
What do you mean we like to? We just have like our tanks full. We can't bring it in right away. Okay, and always blaming the winemaker. Unbelievable here.
I'm just looking at the fruit hanging on the line, going, "Get this stuff out of here."
Hey, so Dominic, why don't you go into your history and how long you've been in the industry, and your background and everything.
Well, as far as being in the industry, I just sort of fell into it when I moved here from California in in 2001. I got to meet a couple of up and coming winemakers in Walla Walla, and they were sort of like, you know more about wine than some of the guys that I've been working with over here for the last 5 to 10 years. And my history just sort of goes back a little bit more to my uncle made wine since I was a kid in California. So I was always hanging out with these guys making wine from the time I was like 7, 8, and 9 and drinking it and having these guys try to mess with me with different vintages of Chateauneuf de Pops and Côte d'Arones, from France, and saying, I thought you liked this wine when they showed me the label, and then they bring out a different vintage, which was totally different, which I hated. And so I had to learn from there. And so just growing up in an Italian family with an uncle that made wine, camping with guys like Jed Steele from who was making wine back in the day for Kendall Jackson, and then making wine for his own self at Steele Vineyards. Meeting John Clues when he first moved over here from South Africa at a Christmas dinner, because my uncle invited him over, who eventually became the winemaker for Clos Duval, and my uncle met him in South Africa on an economics adventure because he was a dean of economics at Sac State as well. So he was over there when they were changing from their apartheid to, their, capitalist system. But of course, being the wine guy he wanted to go meet all these wine makers. And so I've just, been around wine, and I've always loved, wine with food, wine with friends. And it's just about, and as I mentioned earlier, I like wine that has a good balance to it. That nice acidity on the finish that allows you to have it with food, that big fruit that can sort of last for, a good 10 to 20 years in your cellar. That's one of the things, is if Brad ever comes over for dinner, he'll see I try not to drink too many wines that are under a decade old. I figured, let the winemaker, he created this great product, let it showcase itself through the years, and I'll bring it out when it's, reaching its peak performance. But and then basically when I started doing wine sales for some of these guys in Walla Walla, it's like I just dove headfirst into learning about the terroir, the climate, the growing, seasons, and the grape varietals, and the type of soil conditions of the different regions, from the rocky, soil of Walla Walla to the volcanic soils of, Lake Chelan and Red Mountain to, that sandy loess from the floods, from the Missoula floods, and through Yakima and Horse Heaven Hills out through the Willamette, and just fell in love with Washington wines because we're showcasing not only some of the best wines, but the one problem with Washington and with the rest of the world is that we don't do one wine well. We do many, many wines well, and it's hard to tell people, oh, Washington's known for Syrah, Washington's known for Merlot, Washington's known for Riesling, Washington's known for Cabernet Sauvignon, Washington's known for Cab Franc. Well, because we are. they want to box you in, and that's the one thing I've tried to do when I try to sell Brad's wines and go out and do events, is to not just showcase the wine but showcase the region and educate the people. That's don't just look to one varietal, one region. Washington can pretty much almost do it all.
Totally. I think you touched on something that's really important. for me and for in the tasting room is the education, aspect. As a sommelier who then went through wine school and realized he didn't know anything at all about wine until I started actually learning how to make it. Um, it's something that we really strive to do in the tasting room, and is really to educate the customer when they come in about why the wine tastes the way it does, and let's figure out your palate. What do you like as as a person? And so a lot of people come into the tasting room, they're like, well, what's your favorite wine? That's like literally my word. Like, I hate that question more than anything in the world. Like, what do you mean, what's my favorite wine? Who cares what my favorite wine is? What's your favorite wine? You're the one drinking it, like,
Exactly.
and people don't seem to understand that. And it's like, no, tell me what you like, and I'll find a wine that fits that style, and then we can match it together, and then you're happier, I'm happier, versus like, yeah, I love big reds. Okay, if you don't like big reds and you're a Pinot Noir fan, and I give you this Discovery Vineyard Cabernet, you're not gonna like it, right? And so I think that's important overall, is to just know your own personal tastes and your own flavors and what you like, and so education ties into all of that. So I think that's cool that you brought that up too. So, quick question: like, what's the biggest problem for you in your job right now? I assume probably COVID is on the top of that list. But maybe besides that, I mean, what's the biggest problem that you have today?
Well, like you did say, COVID is the biggest problem right now, and it's not so much because of how it's affecting people; it's how it's affecting their budgets. People are drinking sometimes 2 to 3 bottles a day versus 2 to 3 bottles a week. So but they also still want to spend the exact same amount of money they spent when they were drinking 2 to 3 bottles a week. So that's one big thing. And then just like you said, it's not being able to get out there and educate people. It's not being able to get out there and taste them on something new. The problem, it doesn't matter whether it's a recession or it's COVID, or if it's the middle of a winter snowstorm in Seattle. If people aren't getting out to try new wines, they just drink what they've drank for the last 10 to 15 years. And so being, a newer winery on the scene, you have to reinforce them that this is a great wine, that you're going to enjoy this wine with, whether it be this dinner, these friends, this deck. But the only way to do that is to get out there and do tasting events, or go out to the shops and try people on the wine. And that is one of the things that's sort of been unavailable to us over the last 6 months.
No, totally. And, I think that, I think Ashley could agree with that, because, I usually see you at all these events, and I see you out doing these tastings. And, sometimes I'm like, oh, it can't be a good event if she's not here, So, so I mean, I'm sure that this is the problem that you have with your job, right?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, coronavirus is killing the outside sales biz right now. Finding new ways to connect with people. We definitely have explored this whole Zoom thing, trying to join in with these virtual tastings and make connections that way. Going back to old school forms of communication, like sending out lots of postcards to people, has been an interesting route. But yeah, we're just trying to get back out there, and it's been crazy. I'm so ready for events to start up again, but I know people are scared. So
Yeah, can't wait to have outdoor events, because I feel like that's the first thing that's going to come back. So that's exciting. Yeah, missing out on the shows. And what's really hard is not being able to bring our customers into the building and have those tours, because we really enjoy being able to tour people around the facility, learning about labels, and just the scope of what happens when you're creating a label. So it's really hard for not being able to bring people in. We can obviously do Zoom tours, but it's not the same. It's really not the same, no, but it's definitely on top of going to events, bringing the customer in. It's been sad not to be able to have.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying about educating people on wines, a lot of me visiting these events is educating people on labels and letting them know that we're there in the first place, and that they have options. Kind of like doctors, you can get a second opinion. So it's nice to show up.
I learned that after my second surgery. I didn't know there was such thing as a second opinion.
Yeah, another thing about COVID though that's helping us out is the fact that we are a lower price option. I mean, it's not that we're less quality, it's that we've created a model in which we are able to provide for our customers and invest in them so they can invest in their wines. So it's been we're not doing worse because of COVID. So that's fantastic. We're still on that trend and growing continuously. It's just
people didn't stop drinking wines.
Nobody stopped drinking wine. So we're still doing our labels, and we're still trying to help the winemakers produce and do it at the rate that they need to, because they are doing more of the outside sales versus trying to bring people into the winery.
Actually, I should ask you this question, because I'm trying to figure out where we're at with this coronavirus thing. Like, are people ready to start bringing people back into the winery, in person? Would they want to see an outside sales rep drop by, or would they be like, go home, coronavirus?
6 feet. I'm just joking. We're 6 feet no matter what.
Yeah,
But
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to be very specific, for that person. It's very, very tailored, I have a pretty open door policy. We have a big sign outside the winery. We're open 7 days a week still, and it says walk-ins welcome, right? Like, our job and our goal is to make everyone feel happy and everyone feel welcome, even in these times, right? And so I think that's something that we try to do. And it's also important to note that we're not overlooking safety and all that good stuff too. People that know us, they know that we have these air filters that my brother sells actually. And they pump ozone throughout the winery 24 hours a day on low levels. And then when we leave the winery at the end of the night for the tasting room, we do a deep clean, for an hour. And so, this is something that we've been doing for the last 2 years. This isn't COVID specific. This is just something that we've been doing. And so I think, it's important for our customers to know that too, that they're safe when they come in, but you're still welcome to come in. So. So let's talk about this wine now. That we've been sitting here talking for an hour. Like, this wine has definitely changed and opened up, right?
Fabulous.
And also, I just want to say a quick little comment that people are happy that Dominic's video isn't working versus at least Ashley's and Katie's. They're happy that your guys is working at least. So
trying to control my children.
Right. So yes, no. So what are you guys tasting this wine now that's open up a little bit?
Well, the one thing you notice is that
Go, Dominic. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying the one thing you notice is that as it oxygenates a little bit more, is that as the tannin softens up, you're definitely getting a little bit more fruit carrying from the tongue to the back of the from the front of the tongue to the back, and that's the one thing I always enjoy the most is, like, at this point, when you have it open up about an hour to or decanted or so, is that those tannins soften up so slightly and allow the fruit to pull back from the front to the back.
100%. And I agree completely. I just want to shout out really quick that we do have a nice little bonus for our viewers, and we are actually bringing another little bonus. So 30% off for our orders for the next week if you use the promo code DISCO, DISCO. So Info Disco, 30% off, and we are doing free shipping right now on orders over $50. However, it's a little too hot.
You're saying disco. Okay.
Right now.
I got my phone. I can
take a lesson, everybody.
Disco.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite wines because we shorten every name that we have in the winery when it comes in, and so every time we get Discovery Vineyard, it's just disco. It's like, all right, yeah, I want to go to the disco. I
love it.
So Ashley and Katie, what are you guys tasting in this wine now that it's opening up a little bit?
So for me, it went from like like cherries to like raspberry jam. Like, I don't know if that's, I don't have the words, but raspberry jam is definitely the flavor profile that's hitting me right now. And it's smoothed out. It's like really smooth on the tongue now, even more so than when it started, which I really like. And it's inviting me to open the next bottle is what it's doing at this point.
We've been eating too. So we have grapes and cheese and crackers and pretzels. We've been changing our palate over and over again and just continuously drinking.
Yeah, the salt is really good with this on the pretzels. It definitely like mellows everything out. Nice finish. So it's good with the snacks.
Yeah, we're snacking while we're drinking.
Love it.
Ashley showed up a bit early so that we could open the wine. So we have had a little bigger decanter than I think other people have had because we wanted to make sure that we'd had a chance to let the wine breathe before we started.
You thought ahead.
I'm sorry.
I didn't.
Bro.
I opened it about 10 minutes before the webinar. So, kudos to you. I mean, Oliver. So, I mean, this is your fruit, man. This is what are you tasting after an hour in the being open?
Yeah. I opened up the bottle about 1 o'clock this afternoon and tasted it then, and then came back and revisited it again, obviously, as we've been speaking. And I think that time open really helped open it up. You know, I think initially it was kind of a little bit tight. You know, tannins maybe a little more aggressive, but yeah, it's definitely helped it open up, get some of that. You know, it's high octane wine, right? Was it 14.5? So we're looking at like 15.1, 15.2, really, Brad?
Can't tell everybody the secrets.
But yeah, no. So you let that alcohol kind of blow off a little bit, you know.
Is that true?
And carries those aromatics in the nose really nice, right?
Well, you know, you could the label. It can be like one point, you know, above or you know.
Other direction, yeah. Exactly. Okay, sorry, 15.
You didn't know that. Kind of a little guessing game.
I'm out.
Yeah, I don't use that, you know, rule to my advantage, really.
But the alcohol though helps carry the nose very nicely, right? It brings those aromatics up to your nose. You get a little, you know, I got a lot of fresh fruit, maybe, yeah, a little bit of processed red berries. It's tasting really nice and much better after it's open, that's for sure.
Yeah, you know, and I think that's something that we need to talk about. The Eternal wines overall is that these are wines that I create to age, right? With a name like Eternal, if it didn't last 3 years, that'd be kind of sad. So, yeah. So I definitely, you know, I plan for 10 years down the road with these wines, you know, versus our Drink Washington State label, which is, hey, it's a Tuesday, let's open it up, let's pop it, let's have a good time, let's not worry about it, you know. And so that's the difference in the two labels overall. So yeah, so I mean, let's talk about food really quick. Dominic, what kind of food do you see this wine pairing well with? And I did mute you. There you go.
Well, I mean, as with any classic Cabernet Sauvignon, I mean, this is going to be a definite meat-based, you know, wine. With the big tannins and the big fruit, as a younger version, you can have this from, you know, you're probably going to want to have a little bit more, you know, a fattier food with this, you know, whether that be a ribeye, you know, a little Chateaubriand with a nice little demi-glace to it. As this, a heartier Bolognaise sauce with maybe a little bit of a wild boar in there or some nice bison. And then as this wine is, because of the type of wine it is with the big fruit right now, you're going to want to have those sharper cheeses, you know, whether it be, you know, that aged Gouda, you know, that little bit of that Parmesan, you know, the aged Asiago and Parmesan, you know, where you get that nice salt and that fat in there. And then of course in 5 or 6 years or with a couple hours of decantering, then you can probably get into those little, you know, those meals that have a little bit more leaner meat, you know, whether it be the, you know, nice little filet mignon, that veal, you know, cutlet, you know, of course, a little bit of a pork loin type of thing with a nice little cherry sauce on it. You know, all those things are good because this wine has that big fruit as well as that big tannins. So it can go with a lot of, you know, those heartier food. But then, like you said, with a little decantering or aging, then it can go right into those other types of, you know, meals that you would have.
every time I talk about, what this wine would pair with, I just get so hungry. I'm like, why do I do
I know, right?
I always ask this question.
Hey,
Good.
and don't forget some nice mushrooms with this.
I was
Right.
gonna say mushrooms. I'm a vegetarian, so I was gonna go with the mushrooms. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mushrooms.
Well, see, and that's why I can talk to people that are vegetarians as well, because this wine, think of this with that nice grilled portobello, where you sprinkle a little bit of, Himalayan sea salt onto it, and then it's going to go well with that. As the wine, as you decant this one, go with some grilled eggplant, and you can definitely see how those flavors would go in there, especially as the acidity comes up in the wine and the fruit falls back a little bit after it's been decanted.
You
And
should send me your list of meals.
Tell me
Those
what to
those
eat
were
while
good
I drink.
ones. Oh no.
Oh no.
Low battery.
Low battery.
Battery low.
About 10%. We're good.
Okay, we're back.
We're good for a bit.
So
And
just,
now, are you two over there in Cook, Washington, Ashley?
We are in Prosser, Washington right now. Right on the.
Then you should be able. And well, then thankfully you got that warm weather that we don't always get here in Seattle. So think of some nice little tomato carpaccio with a little bit of just some olive oil and some salt on that to go with some wine.
Mm-hmm.
I just harvested
With
the
maybe
tomatoes.
basil.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
Tomato
we're-
Yeah, a little basil oil sprinkle on it.
Yeah, you're right. Now we're all hungry.
it's the worst question to ask ever, but it is the most important question also. Just for the
It's
record.
also, I say you could just drink this without eating anything and be totally happy.
Yes.
Just gonna say,
True.
But remember, when your belly's full, you can drink twice as much.
That's true. Because if that's true, I'm glad to know it.
Or are you just trying to get us?
Dominic's never been accused of that.
Doubt it. Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, this is wine.
I'm so glad you did this, Brad. I'm really
Yeah,
glad.
thank you.
Yay.
Thank you guys. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun, and this wine has definitely opened up over the last hour and definitely gotten kind of a little bit softer and more approachable overall. So my thoughts on Discovery Vineyard and future wines that we have from you guys. We do have a more Cabernet. I haven't bottled either one of those yet. So yeah, we're getting almost 36 months out of this barrel now for the Cab Sauv. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about those, and I think it'll be really cool to line up all three vintages side by side and do a little vertical and taste really the different vintages and the same fruit from Discovery Vineyard, because it is a great vineyard and you guys do a great job over there. I was a little bummed that, Milo and Kane weren't going to be here with us, but, it's okay, Oliver, it's great just looking at you anyways.
I'm not the A list, but I'll take the B list. It's
I might be on the B squad, but you're the B squad leader.
Yeah.
take that.
Right, and we need to get like Vino on the on the podcast here too, or the webinar.
That's right. I know Angus is over here crashed out. Listen to his talk. The other vineyard.
Good dogs. Everybody knows that.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't kidding. I would totally love to vineyard at some point. So
Yeah,
I'll be in touch,
please.
Oliver.
Yeah, please come visit. I don't get too many visitors, so I'd love to show you around.
Excellent. I will be there. I'll get your details from Brad.
Yeah, please, definitely.
Awesome.
Sounds good. Well, yeah, no, thank you guys. Do you guys have anything else that you wanted to say before we wrap up? Going around the circle, anybody?
Well, I just had one question for Oliver. You did mention that they do produce Cab Franc. I was just wondering if any of the wineries he worked with produced a single vineyard Cab Franc of his.
It just recently started coming. I mean, the wine, it's 6 leaf. So last year is the first time we've seen wine come out of those blocks yet. But Yeah, Morgan Lee of Two Vintners makes a, it's not a varietal Cab Franc, but he does a, I think it's called Lost, I believe, but it's a real,
What is it called, Oliver? You kind of broke up there. What is it called?
I believe it's called Lawson from Two Vintners. Two Vintners, yeah, label. But yeah, so he's our Cab Franc and Pondera gets some Cab Franc. But yeah, keep an eye out on those. Damsel also gets Cab Franc from us. So if you keep an eye out, those labels, Two Vintners, Damsel, and Pondera. Yeah, and I don't think Andrew Will took some Cab Franc a few years ago, but I don't think I think that was just for a private, like a wine club release. But yeah, keep an eye on Two Vintners, Pondera, and
Yeah, I was just mainly wondering because it's like I think that's one of the unsung wines of Washington. Sort of like certain areas can do a decent Pinot too. Whether it be like Walla Walla and Chelan, but it's just because the grapes are a little harder to work with in the vineyard and the grapes are a little harder to work with in the winery. You don't see as much of it being actually made because sort of like we were talking about with the different vintages. Sometimes some of these winemakers are just not willing to put the effort in to get the best out of the grapes. They want to work with A+ fruit and make A quality wine, and when they get A- fruit, they make B+. Where a great winemaker or good winemakers they'll get that A wine and make A+, or A fruit and get A+ wines. And that's why I just wondered about like the Cab Francs. It's one of those great grapes that we can produce well. We just don't see enough of it out here.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a really nice standalone varietal if you can find it, but it's there's not many, there's not a lot of good examples of it though, like you're saying. But yeah, I'll keep you updated.
Oh, thank you.
We might need another seminar on Cab Franc here. There's a lot of interest in it. I do love me some Cab Franc, and it is a very hard varietal to work with. I've made it every single year since 2014, and then yeah, it gives me some problems sometimes. I definitely have to spank it. So, but then it clears up time. So
well, there's your glow in the dark label for your new wine.
Yeah, I'm glad something. This could be a.
You
creative.
just learned something.
Yeah. Exactly. Perfect. Well, I think we're going to wrap this thing up. I just want to thank everybody for joining us on this, and Dominic, Ashley, Katie, Oliver, you guys have been a blast. It's been fun. We will continue to drink this off screen, and I'll get you guys hooked up. So, signing out from Walla Walla and from Washington State. Thank you guys, and have a great day.
Thanks, Brad. Thank you.
Chin, chin.
Thank you.
Cheers.